The city never sleeps, but sometimes, it punishes the dreamers. Jasmine Carter walked the streets of Chicago, the weight of her family's past pressing on her shoulders. Her mother's whispered warnings, her father's absence, and the dreams she was told were too big, everything collided in the quiet of her small apartment, where she fought not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever counted on her. Jasmine's story wasn't one of luck, it was carved from sacrifice, tears, and the courage to rise when the world said she couldn't. The wind whipped through the narrow streets of Chicago, carrying with it the smell of rain and asphalt. Jasmine Carter tightened her coat and hurried along the cracked sidewalks, the worn-out sneakers squeaking with each step. At 23, she had already carried more responsibility than most people do in a lifetime. Her small apartment on the south side was cluttered but warm, a sanctuary built from sweat, tears, and unwavering determination. Her mother, Lillian, sat by the kitchen table, counting bills with a frown that had become permanent over the years. "Jasmine, remember, the rent is due tomorrow. And we still owe for the water bill." Her voice, soft yet firm, carried both exhaustion and love. Jasmine nodded silently, sliding the envelope of cash she had saved from her part-time jobs across the table. "I'll cover it, Ma," she said. Her voice barely masked the fatigue in her bones. Lillian looked up, eyes misty. "You're doing too much for someone your age. You shouldn't have to carry all of this." "I don't mind," Jasmine whispered, though her throat tightened. "Someone has to." From a young age, sacrifice had been her closest companion. When her father abandoned them, Jasmine learned that love could disappear overnight, but responsibility never would. She remembered the nights her mother skipped meals so Jasmine and her siblings could eat. She remembered counting pennies to buy school supplies while her friends boasted about brand-new gadgets. Every hardship had etched resilience into her soul. School was both an escape and a battlefield. Jasmine excelled academically, often staying late in the library long after the janitors had locked the doors. She was one of the few black girls in her advanced classes, and she felt the weight of invisible eyes, skeptical of her abilities. "You don't belong here," some teachers whispered in subtle ways. But Jasmine, stubborn and fiery, refused to believe them. Her sacrifices weren't just financial or academic, they were emotional. She often gave up friendships to work extra shifts, and she postponed dreams of exploring the world, of love, of freedom, because she knew someone had to hold the family together. Even her moments of solitude carried the weight of responsibility. Lying awake at night, Jasmine would stare at the ceiling, wondering if this life of constant giving would ever bring her happiness. And yet, even in the quiet, she found a spark, a whisper in her heart: "You're stronger than you think. One day, it will matter." The morning sun streamed through the blinds of Jasmine's cramped apartment, casting stripes of gold over textbooks and worn notebooks scattered across the floor. At 24, she had earned a scholarship to a prestigious university, an achievement her family had celebrated quietly, knowing full well the cost of dreams. But for Jasmine, the excitement of opportunity was tangled with an almost suffocating weight: her responsibilities back home. Her roommate, Maria, bounced into the room, carrying a steaming mug of coffee. "You've got to sleep more, Jasmine. You're going to collapse if you keep running on 2 hours of sleep." Jasmine smiled weakly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now. I have assignments, my part-time job, and everything at home." Her voice trailed off, but Maria understood the unspoken weight she carried. University life was a battlefield. In lecture halls, Jasmine often found herself the only black woman, her presence a quiet statement of resistance. Some classmates stared, some whispered, and some openly doubted her ability to belong. "Are you sure you're in the right program?" one classmate had asked, smirking as if intelligence were reserved for others. Jasmine clenched her notebook, her fingers trembling slightly, but she didn't respond. She had heard such doubts all her life. Why would she let strangers dictate her worth? She spent late nights studying, poring over textbooks, and teaching herself lessons her professors assumed she couldn't grasp. Her part-time job at a local cafe added another layer of exhaustion. The morning rush was relentless, customers impatient, orders flying fast, her body aching by noon, but she kept smiling, even when her hands shook from fatigue. She sent most of her earnings home, sometimes hiding the bruises from exhaustion under long sleeves. Despite the obstacles, Jasmine dreamed big. She imagined a life where she could stand tall without apologizing for her ambition. She wanted to make a difference, to break the cycle of struggle her family had endured for generations. She wrote down goals in her journal each night: graduate with honors, start a career that mattered, give back to her community. And then came the heartbreaks that shaped her resilience. A scholarship rejection here, a dismissive professor there, each no a reminder of the odds stacked against her. But Jasmine learned to convert frustration into fuel. When her roommate went to parties, she stayed behind, memorizing complex equations, drafting essays, and applying for internships that seemed impossible to secure. One evening, exhausted and alone in her tiny dorm room, Jasmine whispered to herself, "I may be tired. I may be alone. But I will not be stopped. Not now. Not ever." It was this determination that carried her forward, even when every part of the world seemed set against her. Dreams against the odds weren't easy. They demanded sacrifice, courage, and relentless perseverance. But Jasmine had all three in abundance. And little did she know, the choices she was making now would define not only her life but the lives of everyone who would come after her. Autumn in Chicago was a strange mix of beauty and melancholy. The streets glimmered with fallen leaves, red and gold, crunching beneath hurried footsteps. Jasmine Carter walked slowly along the campus path, her hands stuffed in the pockets of her worn jacket, her mind spinning with deadlines, part-time jobs, and the constant pressure to excel. It was during one of these long walks that she first noticed Malik, sitting under a massive oak tree, sketchbook on his lap, fingers smudged with charcoal. "Is this seat taken?" Jasmine asked, nodding toward the patch of grass beside him. He looked up, his brown eyes steady and disarmingly gentle. "Not at all," he replied, giving her a smile that felt like sunlight cutting through the clouds. From that day, a quiet companionship began. Initially, it was small gestures, sharing notes for class, walking together to late-night study sessions, grabbing coffee from the corner cafe. But soon, laughter, shared dreams, and personal confessions made their connection deeper. Malik spoke of art, of wanting to make the world see life through his sketches. Jasmine spoke of ambition, of breaking cycles of struggle that had haunted her family for generations. Their love was both intoxicating and complicated. Jasmine, fiercely independent, struggled with the realization that caring for someone else often meant giving parts of herself away. She had learned early that survival required sacrifice, but love tested her limits in ways she hadn't imagined. One summer changed everything. Malik was in a car accident that left him partially injured. He could no longer work his summer job, and his medical bills piled up. Jasmine made a decision that would alter her life. She gave up a prestigious internship in New York, one that could have launched her career, to care for him. "Are you sure about this?" Maria, her roommate, asked one evening, concern etched on her face. "This internship, it's a big deal. You can't let him hold you back." Jasmine hesitated, looking down at her hands. "I can't abandon him. He's more than a friend. He needs me, and I love him. Isn't that enough?" Maria didn't answer. She only nodded, understanding, but unable to fully condone the sacrifices Jasmine was making. The next 3 months were grueling. Jasmine woke before dawn, preparing meals for Malik, managing hospital appointments, and then rushing to her part-time job to pay bills. Exhaustion became her constant companion, but she pressed on, driven by a mixture of love, loyalty, and an unspoken fear of losing him. Every night, she would fall asleep at his side, listening to his breathing, comforting herself with the illusion that love alone could protect him. But love, even when given selflessly, can falter under pressure. Slowly, Malik's restlessness returned. He became distant, spending hours in silence, sketching alone, avoiding the very warmth Jasmine offered. She tried to reach him, to talk, to bridge the gap that was growing between them, but he recoiled. One evening, she found a note slipped under her bedroom door. The paper was folded hastily, the ink slightly smudged. "I'm sorry. I need to find my own path. I can't stay. I need to figure things out." Jasmine read it over and over, her hands trembling, tears spilling uncontrollably. The apartment, once filled with warmth and laughter, felt cold and hollow. The sacrifices she had made, the sleepless nights, the abandoned dreams, the silent tears, seemed meaningless. In the following days, she wandered the city streets, numb. She replayed every memory, every conversation, every moment of care she had given. She questioned herself, was love really worth this pain? Did I lose myself trying to save someone else? Her heartbreak was not quiet. It came in waves, unrelenting and raw. She cried on the kitchen floor, curled up in her dorm bed, and sometimes she simply stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering if she would ever feel whole again. But in the depths of despair, Jasmine discovered resilience. Slowly, painfully, she began to rebuild. She returned to her studies with renewed determination, channeling the emotional turmoil into academic focus. Essays were written with fervor, projects completed with unmatched attention, and even her part-time work became a space where she poured her pain into purpose. She began journaling again, not just recording events, but exploring her emotions, dissecting her feelings, and discovering strength in the act of reflection. "I am stronger than this," she wrote one night, ink smudged by her tears. "Pain is temporary. What I build from it is permanent." The weeks turned into months. Jasmine learned that caring deeply for someone did not have to define her worth. She could love, she could sacrifice, but she could not lose herself entirely. Her heartbreak, as excruciating as it had been, became a teacher. It taught patience, endurance, and the necessity of boundaries. One chilly evening, standing on the balcony of her small apartment, Jasmine gazed at the city skyline. Lights twinkled like a million tiny hopes, each one a reminder that the world was vast, full of possibilities she had yet to explore. Heartbreak had scarred her, but it had also carved a space for resilience. She whispered to herself, voice barely audible over the hum of the city, "I will rise. I will dream. I will live. And no one can take that from me." It was a quiet victory, almost invisible to the outside world, but for Jasmine, it marked a turning point. She realized that life's pain was not a sentence, but a forge. And from that forge, she was emerging stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Jasmine threw herself into her future. She took on extra classes, excelled in her projects, and began mentoring younger students struggling with similar pressures. She laughed again, though cautiously, and opened her heart to friendships she had neglected. Slowly, the void Malik left was replaced by self-reliance, ambition, and a sense of purpose stronger than any love she had once known.
The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Jasmine stepped into the towering glass and steel building of Caldwell and Partners, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. The lobby gleamed with marble floors, polished brass railings, and employees in tailored suits hurrying past with papers and laptops. Jasmine adjusted her blazer and held her breath, feeling both exhilaration and anxiety. She had worked tirelessly to earn this opportunity, but she knew that the real challenge was only beginning. Her first weeks were a whirlwind of orientation, endless paperwork, and meetings that seemed designed to test patience as much as skill. She quickly realized that ambition came with a price far heavier than she had imagined. The office culture was competitive, sometimes cutthroat, and often dismissive of newcomers, especially women of color. "Carter, can you handle this report by tomorrow?" her manager, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Whitmore, asked without looking up from his laptop. "Yes, sir. I'll have it done," Jasmine replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. He barely acknowledged her answer, moving on to the next person in the room. Jasmine spent that night in the office, eyes strained and fingers cramped, turning raw data into a coherent report. She felt a mix of pride and exhaustion, pride in her ability to deliver under pressure, exhaustion from the constant demands that left no space for rest. The first challenge came quickly. Her team had been given a major client project with tight deadlines. Jasmine poured herself into it, often staying until the lights dimmed and the office emptied. Her friends and family called her relentless, but Jasmine simply thought of it as survival. Every hour she worked, every late night, every missed meal was a step toward proving that she belonged here, that she could rise despite the invisible walls society had placed around her. But the corporate world wasn't just demanding, it was unfair. She noticed colleagues, less qualified and far less diligent, being promoted over her. "They just see a black woman as a token," she whispered to herself one night, scrolling through emails announcing a promotion she had been told she was the frontrunner for. Her heart ached with frustration and anger, but she refused to let it break her. She began to make sacrifices she hadn't anticipated. Friendships slowly faded because she couldn't keep up with social events. Personal time disappeared under endless spreadsheets and client calls, and even her health started to show cracks. Her mother called one evening. "Jasmine, you've lost weight. You're working too hard," Lillian said, worry in her voice. "I know, Ma," Jasmine admitted, pressing a hand to her stomach, where hunger pangs had become familiar companions. "But this is temporary. I have to prove myself. I have to make a difference." Jasmine's drive was relentless, but the emotional toll was enormous. The pressure to excel, to survive in a space that doubted her abilities, was constant. There were nights she lay awake, questioning whether all the sacrifices were worth it. "Am I losing myself in the process?" she would ask the darkness. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, Jasmine walked home through the rainy streets of the city. Neon lights reflected in puddles, casting a surreal glow over everything. She stopped at a cafe, ordered tea, and sat staring out the window. The people rushing past, absorbed in their own lives, reminded her of the fragility and beauty of human struggle. She sipped her tea slowly and whispered to herself, "I am not just surviving. I am building something bigger than myself. Every sacrifice counts." The turning point came when Jasmine was assigned to lead a high-stakes project for an influential client. It was her chance to demonstrate her competence, resilience, and innovation. She worked tirelessly, coordinating team members, presenting ideas, and anticipating problems before they arose. She sacrificed weekends, skipped dinners, and even declined invitations from friends, all for the sake of her career. The project, when finally presented, was a resounding success. Her team was praised, and Jasmine's contributions were quietly acknowledged by the higher-ups. Yet, even in victory, the bittersweet reality of ambition remained. She realized that every achievement came with personal costs, relationships strained, health neglected, moments lost that could never be regained. In the quiet of her apartment that night, Jasmine reflected on what she had learned. Ambition demanded more than skill. It demanded endurance, sacrifice, and sometimes painful solitude. But she also realized that every challenge she overcame strengthened her. She had learned to navigate a world that was not always welcoming, to stand firm in her value, and to transform frustration into fuel. The spring sunlight poured through the towering windows of Caldwell and Partners, illuminating the sleek conference room where Jasmine Carter stood, notebook in hand, presenting a groundbreaking proposal. The room buzzed with anticipation. Executives in crisp suits leaned forward, clients shuffled papers nervously, and her manager, Mr. Whitmore, finally looked up from his tablet, his expression unreadable. For Jasmine, this was more than just another presentation. It was a culmination of years of relentless work, late nights, missed celebrations, heartbreak, and self-sacrifice. Every project she had completed, every report she had turned in at the last minute, every overtime shift had led to this moment. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from a quiet, steady pride that she had finally arrived at a place she had only dreamed of. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jasmine began, her voice calm but powerful, "what I am presenting today is not just a strategy for profit. It's a vision for sustainable growth that balances innovation with responsibility. This approach considers our team, our clients, and our community. Because true success is measured not only by numbers but by the lives we impact. As she spoke, the room transformed from a sea of skepticism to one of admiration. Questions came, critiques were raised, and objections were skillfully addressed, not with defensiveness, but with clarity and confidence born from experience. Each answer Jasmine gave demonstrated the depth of her knowledge, the meticulous preparation behind her proposal, and her unshakable dedication to excellence. By the end of the session, the clients were nodding, impressed beyond expectation. Mr. Whitmore, who had often dismissed her quietly in the past, offered a rare, approving smile. Jasmine exhaled slowly, feeling a wave of relief and validation wash over her. Years of struggle had finally yielded recognition that was tangible, undeniable, and deeply satisfying. Recognition beyond the office. The months following the presentation were transformative. Jasmine received promotions, invitations to industry conferences, and even media coverage highlighting her innovative work. Yet, it wasn't just the accolades that mattered, it was the influence she began to wield. She was now in a position to mentor other young women of color, to advocate for fairness in hiring and promotions, and to create pathways where there had previously been barriers. She started a mentorship program within her firm, personally guiding interns and junior employees. Every Tuesday evening, she hosted small workshops, teaching not just technical skills, but resilience, self-advocacy, and the importance of self-worth. "Miss Carter, I don't know if I could have made it without you," one intern, a timid young woman named Tasha, confessed one evening. "I faced so many doors closing in my face. You've shown me that it's possible to rise, even when the world says no." Jasmine smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Tasha, remember this, your talent and your effort are never wasted. Keep pushing. Keep believing. And never forget the sacrifices you make for your future are worth it." Even as recognition poured in, Jasmine never forgot the price she had paid. The long hours, the relentless pressure, the friendships that had faded, they left marks. Her body and mind sometimes ached from years of constant pushing, and the memories of heartbreak, especially Malik's, occasionally resurfaced. One evening, standing alone on her apartment balcony and looking at the skyline of Chicago, Jasmine whispered to herself, "I've lost parts of myself along the way, but I've gained strength I never knew I had." Her triumph was not without solitude. Many nights she lay awake, reflecting on the sacrifices made, the moments of doubt, the personal life she had postponed. Yet, in every sleepless night and every lonely hour, she found clarity. The life she had built was worth every ounce of pain. Giving back. As Jasmine's influence grew, so did her desire to create opportunities for others. She launched community initiatives in her old neighborhood, scholarships, mentorship programs, and workshops for young women who faced the same obstacles she once did. She partnered with local organizations, securing funding, volunteering her time, and speaking at community events. During one event, a young girl approached her nervously. "Miss Carter, I want to go to college, but my family can't afford it. I don't know if I can do it." Jasmine knelt down, looking her in the eye. "You can. You absolutely can. I was in your shoes once, scared and unsure. But you have something stronger than fear, your determination. I'll help you get there." These moments, more than awards or promotions, defined her triumph. Recognition, she realized, was not just about personal achievement, it was about the ripple effect of her actions, the lives she touched, and the hope she instilled in others. Jasmine's story of triumph and recognition was loud. She celebrated victories in her career, yet she never lost sight of the lessons learned from her struggles. Her heartbreaks, sacrifices, and relentless ambition had shaped her into a leader who was empathetic, wise, and fiercely resilient. She began to travel, attending conferences not just for business growth, but to inspire others. In panels and speeches, she recounted her journey candidly, the long nights, the setbacks, the societal barriers, and the heartbreaks. People listened, captivated by her honesty, her vulnerability, and her unwavering spirit. Her life, once defined by struggle, was now a story of inspiration. She was proof that sacrifice, resilience, and relentless dedication could transform not only one's life but the lives of countless others. On a quiet Sunday morning, Jasmine sat by her apartment window, watching the city stir below. She reflected on her journey, tears shed alone. She realized that every trial had been necessary, every sacrifice meaningful, every heartbreak a lesson in strength. Triumph, she understood, was not a single moment. It was the accumulation of courage, persistence, and the choice to rise despite adversity. Recognition was not merely external, it was internal, a quiet confidence that she could endure, achieve, and give back. With that, she looked toward the horizon, knowing the road ahead would have its own challenges, but ready to face them with the wisdom, strength, and grace she had earned. The first rays of dawn broke over Chicago, painting the skyline in soft shades of pink and gold. Jasmine Carter stood on the rooftop of the community center she had helped establish, overlooking the streets where she had once walked as a struggling student, a young woman burdened by responsibility, sacrifice, and heartbreak. It had been years since those early struggles, the nights of tears, the sleepless study sessions, the heartbreaks, the relentless grind of corporate life. Every challenge, every sacrifice, every failure had been a step toward this moment. Jasmine could see it all now, her past, her triumphs, and the path she had carved for the future. Giving back. The community center buzzed with life. Children played in the courtyard, laughter echoing through the building. Young women gathered in classrooms for mentorship sessions. Scholarships hung like banners on the walls, bearing the names of students Jasmine had helped fund. Jasmine walked through the center, smiling as she observed the energy she had helped cultivate. A young girl, no older than 14, ran up to her, holding a stack of papers nervously. "Miss Carter, I wanted to thank you. I got into the college I applied for." Jasmine knelt to meet her eyes, a warmth spreading through her chest. "See? I told you. You believed in yourself, and that's what made it possible. This is only the beginning of what you can achieve." It was in these moments, more than any award, promotion, or media coverage, that Jasmine felt her greatest success. The sacrifices of her past, the long nights, the heartbreak, the missed opportunities, had led her to this point. Her achievements were not measured solely in titles or accolades but in the lives she could touch and uplift. Reflections on the past. Standing alone in her office later that evening, Jasmine gazed at a photograph of her younger self, sitting on the cracked sidewalks of her old neighborhood, clutching worn notebooks and dreaming of a life she couldn't yet imagine. She thought of her mother, Lillian, who had worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and lights in the apartment. She thought of Malik, whose departure had left her heartbroken but stronger. She thought of every friend she had lost, every sleepless night, every tear shed in solitude. A quiet voice inside her whispered, all of it mattered. Every bit of pain. Every sacrifice. Every moment built you into who you are today. Jasmine realized that life's hardships were not punishments, they were lessons. They had taught her resilience, courage, empathy, and determination. They had shaped her into a woman capable of not only surviving but thriving, capable of lifting others as she rose. Challenges of leadership. Even in triumph, life was not without challenges. Managing the center required patience, strategy, and unending energy. There were times she wanted to give up, when funding fell short, when bureaucratic obstacles seemed insurmountable, or when she feared she wasn't making enough of a difference. But Jasmine had learned the art of endurance. She reminded herself of her younger self, of the struggles she had overcome, and of the countless young lives that now depended on her guidance. Every setback was met with creativity, every failure with reflection, every doubt with action. She held weekly meetings with volunteers and staff, not just assigning tasks, but inspiring them. "Remember why we're here," she said one morning. "We're here to give hope, to open doors, to show the next generation that their dreams matter. And together, we can make a difference that lasts." A moment of solitude. Late one evening, after the center had emptied, Jasmine sat quietly in the rooftop garden, watching the city lights twinkle below. She sipped tea slowly, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. From the young girl who had walked streets burdened with responsibility to the woman who now led a movement of hope and empowerment, she had come full circle. Tears welled up, not from sadness, but from gratitude. She thought of her mother, her siblings, her mentors, and even Malik, whose absence had pushed her to discover her own strength. She realized that true fulfillment was not about personal accolades, it was about creating ripples that touch lives long after you are gone. "I made it," she whispered softly. "Not alone, but because I refused to give up. Not because life was easy, but because I chose resilience, compassion, and courage." Legacy and hope. Over the next few months, Jasmine expanded the programs at her center: scholarships, internships, mentorship workshops, and community outreach. She spoke at conferences, sharing her story and inspiring countless young people to pursue their dreams, no matter the obstacles. The city knew her now, not just as a successful executive, but as a beacon of hope, a woman who had risen above hardship, heartbreak, and societal barriers to build something enduring. And yet, she remained humble, remembering the streets she had once walked, the sacrifices she had made, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Her story was no longer just about Jasmine Carter. It was about the power of resilience, the value of sacrifice, and the transformative impact one life can have on a community. Final reflection. On a quiet Sunday, Jasmine sat on the rooftop again, watching the sunrise. The world below moved in its usual chaos, but for her, there was a profound sense of peace. She had faced heartbreak, conquered ambition, endured sacrifice, and emerged stronger. She had learned that life's challenges were not obstacles but stepping stones toward purpose. As the sun bathed the city in gold, she whispered one last time, "I have lived, I have loved, I have lost, I have risen. And now, I will give back, always." The journey that had begun with hardship, struggle, and uncertainty had come full circle. Jasmine Carter's life was a testament to resilience, determination, and the enduring power of hope.